Khalil Gibran once said, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." The Vulnerable Power Show is a deep dive into the heart of leadership. Hear raw insights and wisdom from experienced leaders who transformed during their dark night of the soul journey, now bringing light to the world. Spotlighting heart-centered leaders that have transformed, stepping into their fullest light and mission. Learn how you, too, can weather life's storm and thrive. What are the keys for successful personal growth and life-changing transformation? It is my intention to bring you wisdom, empowerment, hope, and inspiration, so you too can ascend to your fullest light as a leader, to bring about impact for the collective good. Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Vulnerable Power Show, a deep dive into the heart of conscious business leadership and overall leadership. Today, I'm here with a dear soul brother, a very wise and embodied leader, Richard Bellars, all the way over in the UK. Not so sunny UK right now. And as always, wanted to start us off with the premise for the show. Why are we here? Really fourfold. One, to show the inner workings of transformation, to show what it's like to go through the awakening, however you want to term it, that process of really expanding one's consciousness and stepping into their full potentiality. And two, to show inspiration. Oftentimes, this process can seem daunting, can seem scary, bringing that fearlessness forward, that calm fearlessness forward, and bringing hope that you too, at whatever stage of this process you're on, this human experience, leadership journey you're on, that you too can do it. And lastly, to show and spotlight embodied examples of heart-centered leadership. And today we have a very, very unique example of that. And as always, I'd like to start with how I met the guest. So today, this fellow business wizard and I met through a group. And it was an interesting interaction because I felt something, and in the past, I wouldn't have spoken up and would have people pleased and had all this, shall we say, story around it. And I felt inspired to be vulnerable and assert. I sensed something was askew, and I left the group momentarily, a little bit reactive, I have to admit. And in that, there was a reverberation, which inspired Richard, who we kind of knew each other tangentially, to lean in, which sparked and catalyzed this bond that has brought us here today and continues to grow and amplify. So it's an example how we connected, and the premise for teeing up Richard today and how we connected was I took a leap, got a little messy, and it worked. It inspired. There's a butterfly effect, as we talked about with the episode with Jennifer Hill and other soul sisters. So without further ado, Richie, BB, I'm glad you're here. How you doing today? How you feeling?
I'm very well. And we did have blue skies today. Even in the UK.
Even in the UK. Maybe it's because of us today. It's the divine. I will give you great weather in the wintertime today. So I wanted to kind of provide some more context for the audience, because I know, Richie, you're in the process, as I am, of updating branding and things like that, and craft and packaging, window dressing, shall we call it. So I did something inspired, and as I told you, I usually go with the flow, and this is very improvised. I kind of looked you up, did a little snooping, because I know Richard the man. I didn't know Richard the practitioner. And for the audience listening, this is really what I felt inspired to start off with before I give Richie the proverbial talking stick. Calm and compassion as superpowers, ladies and gentlemen. Leadership evolution, conscious awareness. And for me today, I wanted to start by asking Richard how he answered the call. And that's kind of what I saw on your website. And I know you may update it or tweak it. And lastly, this really jumped out at me, as I already told you my last night. Why leave your legacy for someday when you can live your legend today? Which you and I are both Christopher Nolan fans, and he's all the way over yonder across the pond. And Batman, the Dark Knight series, you have, as I shared with you, and you know very well. And I was like, by Jove, that's like Batman, the Dark Knight. Richie Poo is like Batman for leadership, And so that's what I wanted to start off by, as I kind of premised with you and said, answering the call. So without further ado, if you don't mind, however you feel inspired, really, where were you? If you maybe give us a glimpse of before BC and AD, where were you before you answered the call for yourself on your leadership journey?
Cool. Okay, thanks, Hass. And by the way, I wouldn't say I'm Batman, but you've never seen us in the same room together. Yeah, the thing is, there was a moment. I mean, there have been lots of moments, but there was a particular moment which I'll come to. However, I have a vivid memory of I think I was nearly 4 years old, just under 4 years old, and I have this vivid memory of sitting on a rock in southwest Wales, staring out at the sea, and it's a felt memory that of familiarity and this awe, this looking around at the beauty of the world and going, wow, this is a precious place, which was a source of frustration as I was educated and started to, discover that the world wasn't at peace and harmony and, in reverence of this beauty, I suppose. And none of this I've worked out since, right? It's not like I knew what I was doing at the time. I still don't know what I'm really doing. I keep following this call. So you could say that I followed a normal path for someone who, for an Englishman, born into a middle class, loving family, decent education, great group of friends, played sport at the weekends, went to the pub. Life was good, and I mean, I was always curious. I was always looking out there. I was always looking out there, and was following the sort of, this is what you do if you've got your background. Until, so in 2001, I was going out with the girl of my dreams. I was, as I say, a great group of friends living in London. I felt I had a decent job. I felt like a sort of paid student, basically. It was great. And then 9/11 happened. And my experience, and I know people who were directly involved, but my experience was one of consuming rage. And I don't think I'd ever even known what rage was until then. Maybe not even tantrums as a child. And I wouldn't consider myself an angry person either. But this rage, and it came up through my body. It was like, it was volcanic, and it was like, and it was expressing itself as, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this, but it was,
do however you feel, be however you feel.
Well, it was fuck humanity. We have been given this gift and we are fucking it up. And yeah, I was angry at humanity with humanity, and humanity with nature, and humanity with the planet. And we've been given this gift, and look at how we are with it. And then that was boiling away. I scared myself. I scared my partner at the time. I scared my family. And it was followed by this voice, which said, "So what are you going to do about it?" And that was the scary bit, because once that question came, there was no hiding, and there hasn't been any hiding since. Well, I can try and hide, right? I can try and hide, but that question will always, always, always find me out. Yeah, so that that scared the bejesus out of me, so to speak, and sent me on a bit of a spiral down initially. At any rate, there was this inspiration, and it's like that means my life up to now is not in line with my life that's coming, and even though I don't know what it is yet.
Wow. I'm going to change it up real quick because I was going to read this at the end. And I feel like when I saw this yesterday and it came into my inbox through an email that I normally get, I was like, this is Richard. And you so beautifully and eloquently dove right in, which I love deep dive. That's what this is. And so, yeah, I resonate so much. And thank you for your raw dive in, because that's very much at moments I've had that. So here's the poem that I saw yesterday by E. Cummins. And it's perfect segue from your intro. A poet, somebody who feels and who expresses their feelings through words. This may sound easy. It isn't. A lot of people think or believe or know they feel, but that's thinking or believing or knowing, not feeling. And poetry is feeling, not knowing or believing or thinking. Almost anybody can learn to think or believe or know, but not a single human being can be taught to feel. Why? Because whenever you think or you believe or you know, you're a lot of other people. The moment you feel, you're nobody but yourself. So it scared the bejesus out of you. It woke you up out of this lull. I remember, actually, and this is a very beautiful subject to continue on, which, not to get too far down this, Middle Eastern born man here, legal name Hassan. I grew up by my middle name, Mehran. I'm sitting on the couch about to go to uni, as you folk call it over there, college, as we call it over here down in San Diego from LA. And I sit on the couch, grab breakfast, and I see, what the heck? And then like the name Hassan starts to appear in the news, because the alleged suspects had that Middle Eastern origin. And boy, did life change. As Chris Rock, the comedian, once said, that Middle Easterners became the new race that got picked on in America. So it's interesting that caused your awakening, because for me, I think the second most surreal moment on my parents' TV was watching Trump win in 2016, which, those two moments of seeing the towers on their big screen TV and then Trump win stand out, etched in my mind. I knew in both moments something's happening in the world. It is shifting. And I was like, deer in headlights. So I sense that's kind of what you felt like. This, scared the bejesus out of you. So what shifted? What gave after that? Like, how did it then promulgate?
Well, what scared the bejesus out of me is that what do I take responsibility for? What am I going to do in my life? Is it going to be passive? Is it going to be passive, or is it going to be proactive, let's say? And both scared me, actually. Both options scared me, because passive would be lying to myself, and proactive would be stepping into unknown territory. And again, a lot of this is worked out in hindsight. The where this would take me was, because at that point you can hear that there was judgment. There was judgment. There was projection. There was, the world is screwed. Yeah, and as if Richard can do something about it, kind of thing. There was this, or not, because there was this, what I now understand to be the duality of superiority, inferiority, right? So my inferiority says, well, what can I do? My superiority says, look at these people screwing up the world. And so it would send me on a trail of delayering, you know, and when I think of the layers of the emotional layers of anger, fear, sadness, hurt, and for me, the big one, guilt and shame.
Hmm.
So everything that I was projecting outwards onto the world would all come back at me. When I say come
Interesting.
back at me, would all be discovered in me.
So now we're touching upon that territory of I think it was Essex University and Neil Seth and the studies out of the neuroscience institutes that the whole universe is a hologram. That this is one big VR in a sense, innocently. So how can you unpack that for us, for those listening that may be new to this perspective, to this expanded consciousness, or this viewpoint, so to speak, or this this
What,
witness?
the holographic universe?
Well, no, the way I explain it that way, from your perspective, this notion of what do I do about it, personal responsibility, because it feels like you're unpacking your own shift within, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I find the deepest learning comes through experience, right? Because then it's my learning, and it is. Once you've had an experience, it's in your cells. You know, you can try and talk yourself out of it with your mind, but once you've had an experience, your body knows. Yeah, yeah, and your heart and your body, and so I mean, I love learning. I love learning new stuff. I love learning about theories and models. And behind them, there's always this question of so what? That's interesting. So what? And the so what for me is what brings it into the present, what brings it into an embodied life. So yeah, fractal universe, holographic existence, great. I get it. I love it. So what? Well, what that takes me to is that there is no, ultimately, if everything's connected and everything's holographic, then there is no out there. It is my projection. So if I play with, because sometimes that's a bit heavy, bit burdensome. So over the years, I try to play with what if. So there's so what, and then what if. So what if I am the creator of my reality? What if I am the creator of the entirety of my reality? And that can bring up a few oh shit moments, and it can be quite cool. What it means, though, is that everything I see is me at
Mm-hmm.
some level,
Mm-hmm.
right? At some level, um, and to play with that. So, and it means if it's something awesome, it's like, well, where do I create that, or where is that in me? How is Hass an aspect of me, right? And it's also the stuff that I don't have time for. If there are certain politicians who, irritate the hell out of me, it's probably because they represent some part of my, for example, dysfunctional masculine male arrogance. I'm not thinking of anyone in particular. So that's me. He's me. On some level, he is me, especially if he annoys the shit out of me.
So the more the trigger, the more the charge, you're speaking my
I
lingo.
would say, yeah.
Yeah. Is the more there
Otherwise,
is to look at.
otherwise, otherwise, why am I having an emotional response? And that's not a positive or a negative. It's showing me something I care about.
Now let me play
Right?
devil's advocate.
What's that?
Let me play devil's advocate. And what about those naysayers that go, no, it's not. It's separate. I'm separate from the outside reality. There is no part of me. How do you, it comes through right now to kind of ask you that. And I know we're still continuing on your
Yeah, yeah.
unpacking. Yeah.
Oh, great. That's their reality. I'm not here to change someone else's reality. I want to kind of live my own. The Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. It's like, I'm not crazy. My reality is just different to yours. And I don't need to convince someone else. There's 7 billion different versions of conscious exploration going on. It's as much as I can do to sort of find out what my own is. Yeah. So, and who am I to prove or disprove, prove mine over someone else's and disprove someone else's over mine? That's that. No,
It's a
don't.
potent response.
And by the way, if I do that, that says more about me than it says about them.
How so?
Well, why don't what? Because I'm trying to change them to do what? To fit my version of what I think is real, what I think is true. Again, then I've slipped into either some kind of superiority or a fit, which is usually actually a fear of inferiority. So I'm trying to cover it up with superiority instead of actually what do I need? What do I need to process in myself to be able to be, to have equanimity, to have, to feel neutral. And then some people will go, but neutral's boring. Who wants to be neutral? And it's like, okay, so enjoy the drama. Enjoy the drama. What I find is the more I can dispel the energies that maybe are stuck in my system or are seeking expression, the more neutral I can be. And then there's space. There's a space that opens up because I'm not holding on to something. And then I feel incredible because I'm in a space and a place of creating my reality, as in choosingly so. I don't know if that's a word. Then I can create in this moment. I can feel in this moment because it's not coming from some kind of regret or relationship of the past or fear of the future. It's coming from how am I right now, and what do I want? What am I? It's not even what do I want to experience. It's what am I experiencing right now, and then I just feel alive. I say just. I mean that's it. That's what I want, right? I want to feel alive. Clear out the other stuff.
Yeah.
Feel alive.
That's it. You took, as always, we ping back and forth telekinetically because, as the expression goes, you can't pour new wine into old lambskin. You cannot. And you're speaking to this leadership alchemy, this notion of, dispelling the old energies, clearing out the old stuff that's getting in the way of you living in the now, embodying the now. And one of the biggest things I've learned a lot from you, is this equanimity creates the space. Because I was one of those people that would freak out in stillness, be like, what's going on? My sagacious, fiery side is going, it's too calm on the home front. There's something wrong here. Everybody, let's create some kinetic. And I realized this was a very big shift for me, that in that stillness, newness can be birthed. And when I want novelty, if I want new, if I want to feel alive, if I want to feel fulfilled, it's birth. Creativity is birthed in stillness, as you've said to me several times. And that's what I find is interesting, right? Because we're talking about paradoxes, right? We're talking about this notion of how do you get into, Richie, I thought we have to do to get, to achieve, to outcome, and do to change and create. Well, you're telling me to stop and pause and still to create. So let's go back to your experience. So this rage comes up. This seems like it was a clearing. How did you shift? How did that then lead you as you were starting to then hear the call? It sounds like that awoken you to this call. I can't escape the call. You try to hide from it. It's like, it'll find you if you're destined.
Well, I spent a few years refusing the call.
Amen to that, right? Leave me alone, call.
Yeah.
Hang up.
And sometimes I can be a bit of a slow mover. So it was, on the football field, my friends used to say I have the turning circle of an oil tanker. I can be quite stubborn, or it's like, wanting to work out what it's going to look like before moving.
That's
right?
it.
And I mean, short version is, I suppose what happens is eventually I get so uncomfortable with myself that I have to change. Something has to change, and if I don't change, I get changed. Something comes along, and it's the Tower card in the tarot, right? Which represents transformation. if you, and for me, it's like Goddess Kali as well. You know, if you resist, you'll get struck down with fire. You'll have your head chopped off. You know, something will happen to initiate that what ultimately that transformation. The way I see it now is we can. It's happening anyway, so we can do it kicking and screaming, or we can do it with ease and grace. You know, by surrendering. I suppose just definitely, I know what the kicking and screaming version is like. Um, but eventually it led to this. I won't go into the details here, but it led to the end of the steady job, the steady relationship, and the home in London within the space of 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah, crawled into a hole for a while, feeling sorry for myself, and then one day came out of that hole, and I went, right, I'm going traveling, which seems to be one of my yes, it's been an escape, but it is a way I process, it is a way I explore, it is a way I move. I create that movement so that, you know, rather than stuckness. If I otherwise I can stay stuck in stuckness and analysis paralysis. So yeah, funny enough, do you know where my first port of call when I went?
Where? Iran?
San Diego.
San Diego. Oh!
I had friends there, so I wanted a safe haven on the way to Fiji, so I stopped off in San Diego.
I think the call was taking you to me, only you didn't hear the call clearly. It was like, go find us. He's in San Diego. This is interesting because I was going to ask you this question of how did your world travel shape you? And then lo and behold, you synchronistically brought it up because
Well, yeah, except that then that was, I recognize now that was pure escapism and licking my wounds. And
okay.
when I came back, I can see in hindsight that I had hopes of returning to some kind of normality, and it was,
Ah.
you know, in fact, a few things. One important thing that happened was I went to Africa for the first time, and even before the plane landed, I had tears coming down my face, and I knew that there was a feeling of home, you know, and that was only South Africa. I mean, it's, you know, one country right at the bottom. So, um, and when I ultimately when I was supposed to go there for a friend's wedding and a 3-week holiday on my way back to the UK, and I stayed for 6 months, helping two friends set up their new little business, to travel business. And when I left, that's when things were starting to shape. I left again in tears because I loved it there. I left with these 3 statements, I guess, or promises. I want to love what I do every day. I want autonomy in my life. And this is where I started with, and I want what I do to make a difference. This is where the whole live your legacy started, live your legend. So yeah, I had these sounded great. They sounded so vital and, you know, full of energy and direction and great. And I had no idea what they meant. I had no idea how that translated into some kind of livelihood or lifestyle. So guess what I did? I went back into corporate life. Yay! Nothing wrong with corporate life,
Right.
except that for me, what happened, it wasn't what I was doing. It's that what I was doing wasn't what I promised myself. I'd broken my 3 promises to myself, and to chase the bucks. Well, not to chase the bucks. I needed to replenish the coffers at the time, but I wasn't being true. It's like I now know I'd set 3 clear intentions. I didn't know that's what they were at the time. So then I was living out of kilter with those intentions, and it 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 killed me inside. That's when the emotional upheaval before was nothing compared to the depression that came then, because I was living a lie.
Unpack that. I have some stuff. I keep going because you're flowing with this. So what is that? That's beautifully said. all of that. I mean, I'm like, whoa, there's so much there. We'll unpack it in a moment. Why? Why does, when you set the intention, right? You cast the proverbial spell, you cast it out, you manifest, set that ball of manifestation, cosmic manifestation in motion, and then you lived out of alignment from that energetic space. Why did that cause physical dis-ease, depression? Why? From your perspective, everybody's heard my perspective and other.
Looking at it now, or that?
Yeah, whatever feels inspired for you. It's no right or wrong.
I mean, well, put it this way, coming at it as a slight tangent, I can see that my best decisions, and by best I mean most coherent decisions, are when I trust the feeling in my heart and body. So my heart and body were going, ah!
One more time.
I mean, I remember I almost started to close down, which for me is what depression, my experience of depression is.
Bingo.
Right? Disconnection. It's a, you start to disconnect from yourself and go in on yourself. And yeah, I can't think of other words. But
No, that's perfect.
It's shrinking, it's depleting. It's sort of like, you become a dementor to your own life. If you Harry Potter movies.
Yeah.
It started sucking the life out of you, which is the exact opposite I wanted. I wanted to feel more life, not less of it.
So the more you resisted life, the more you resisted the calling some more, the more it sucked the life out of you. It's kind of this whole be careful what you wish for is what I always tell people when they start this work. And I like this. Let me unpack a couple of things you've said. So it's brilliant what you said at the end, because that's what Barry Holmes, another soul brother of ours, said. I'm going to release his episode soon, which will be before this episode for those that are watching. And he said the same thing, which is not a surprise to us. So you say you come out of this trip to Africa, because I love that it was escapism too, because that's what it was for me. When I started my sabbatical and everything, broke down, I discovered this concept. Actually, it was funny. So my buddy Larry Keslin, fellow Virgo, he introduced me to this space. He was creating a space, brought some people together, and I guess we can call them business wizards too. And there was this one gentleman who I'd known, who was a financial planner, kind of like our buddy Mel, more of the financial strategy side, and he did the holistic work. And then he goes, "Oh, you're going on sabbatical. You're going over to Europe, and you don't have any plans. You're going on shamanic traveling." And I'm like, "Huh?" This is in 2016. I'm like, "Huh? Shamanic?" I mean, I knew what shamanism was. Shamanic. He goes, "Yeah. It's where you aimlessly wander. Only it's not aimless per se, because you're being guided." And I remember when I landed in Europe, I think it was this first stop, I was crying inexplicably, because as this gentleman, I think his name was Paul, explained, explained, was this notion of it activates you. You go to these places, you're led there, whether you think it's escapism or not. And I've learned this gentleness and grace. So I appreciate that you brought that in. And then you talk about conscious exploration. That's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. So you're now in corporate again. You're in dis-ease. You're feeling depressed. You're dementor to yourself. So what gives next? What happens next on these Gulliver's Travels, as it were? Bellars Travels.
By the way, I there's a wonderful word. I don't know if you know it. Coddywomple.
Coddywomple. It sounds like Willy Wonka.
Doesn't it just? It's to travel with intention, but no specific destination.
Coddywomple?
Yeah, I love it.
And say the definition one more time for the audience.
Travel with intention, without a specific destination.
Beautiful.
So what I didn't realize is I was starting to coddywomple.
Coddywomple.
So English, right? Anyway, yeah, what happened? Well, the breakdown led to a breakthrough. I started listening to those three things I'd said, and I go, well, what do I love? I started with what do I love? So I started creating a list of what do I love. Yeah, I had all sorts of things. I was going to set up a charity in Africa. I was going to start my own consultancy. I was going to, one thing back in the day, I quite liked golf. I wanted to be a greenkeeper. I wanted to be a beekeeper. I wanted to be a wine journalist. Because I've worked in wine previously. I've worked in golf previously. I've done some other random jobs. Yeah, I thought about going back to Spain as an English teacher. It's loads of things. And suddenly it was like, I enjoy a lot of things, just not what I'm doing. And it was a friend of mine a friend Lizzie, to whom I'll be forever grateful. I know exactly where we were in London. And she took me for a drink and she said, well, why don't you go and see a life coach? And I go, great idea. What's that? And then she goes, even better, become one.
Wait, what?
Yeah. You've helped me and a bunch of our friends, with listening and asking great questions. So you can get paid for that. And I was like, you can get paid for that? And 9 days later, I was booked onto my first training course, and something opened up, and I was like, something was lit in me about, being able to be in service to others to help them discover what lights them up. And everything since then has been a variation of that. However, what I will add is, you could say I'm still coddywampling. It's traveling with intent. That sense of service, and this is where who do I want to work with? So if I want to live a life of impact and influence, then I want to work with people who want to live a life of impact and influence. This is where the idea of working with leaders and leaders who want to evolve, who want to go on that journey of discovery without knowing what comes next.
That's scary. I mean, it's doubly scary because of what we've already spoken to on our many conversations. This be careful what you wish for is what I call it, is the responsibility that comes with this daunting conscious realization. I create all of this. This is all an extension of my observer in a sense. And that's that already, right? Which in the human condition, the human existence can feel conscious wise daunting. And then you add this other notion of leap and know not where you're leaping. And it's like, wait, what? So I can only imagine that's really brave. And the more I listen to you, the more I learn, and the more I swear you're the most interesting man in the world, like the Dos Equis commercial. Because I go, what hasn't Richard done? So you're there on your journey, and when you're unpacking this, because I resonate with this too, is you don't know that which you are, right? As another friend says a while back on my journey, she said, Hass, you can't read the ingredients from inside the bottle. You're inside the bottle, so you don't see your skill set. So I had a similar epiphany. People would tell me, oh, you should be doing this. I'm like, really? That's something that people value? Like, really? Like, I do that? I feel like it was a similar realization or epiphany for you. You were like, I do that? That's simply my beingness. I didn't know that's something people want. I thought I had to do something else.
Well, this is really important because we've created a culture, I would say mainly globally, the predominant culture is one based on valuing what people do, not valuing who they are. Okay, and this is why I believe we grow up not valuing what we find easy. Because what we find easy, what we have energy for, these are our gifts, these are our talents. This is what we then go and learn a whole bunch of other strengths, and we tend to get employed or engaged for the things that we've learned to do well, rather than the things that we naturally do well. So you've got your learned strengths and you've got your natural strengths. Great. Now, how many times has it happened to people where, one day you're doing something else that you find easy, and your client or your boss says, I didn't know you could do that. It's like, yeah. But that isn't what we've sold, right? That isn't what we've been told to sell of ourselves. We've been told to sell, look, I've learned this. I've learned this for this many years. I've practiced this for this many years. This is what I offer. Rather, because we don't go, I offer who I am. And then we have to spend all this time unraveling it to come back to the who I am in what I do, or the who I am is what I do, because who I am is the frequency of my being, and the frequency of my being is my purpose.
It's like, I knew this was going to happen seamlessly in an intuitive sense. You're following on Barry Holmes is our soul brother's theme, the unlearning from his episode. To go back, if you're watching this, and watch his episode if you already haven't, is the unlearning and then returning to our natural resonance, right? You alluded to it in your terminology very astutely, is you do, right? You're offering what you are. And this is worthiness stuff, right? I mean, this is, now we're touching on self-worth type of a concept is how I hear it. Cause I didn't know the people would, and I don't want to get into pay and commercialization, for a lack of a better description, as Barry talked about it, and we've talked about, and others talk about it. Monetary exchange is currently what we're operating in that system. So I didn't know that people would pay me, or that was worth something, who I am and how I show up, my natural frequency, right? I had forsaken myself in a sense, and it's just coming back to that, wait, what? And then being like, wait, what?
And also, that's okay too. That's part of, it's the, we go on the journeys. I can't remember the exact quote, but we go on the journey so that we can return and see the world anew with fresh eyes. So we come back to where we started. And this for me is the journey of consciousness. It's the singularity point, that comes out to here to observe itself from all angles, right? And then the next movement is the singularity moves to there, creates another one, moves to there, creates another one, seed of life, flower of life, all of life. So we go on this journey of we start with not knowing to go to this place of knowing, and then we return to a deeper knowing. Do you know what I mean? A deeper expression, I would like to say, of knowing, because it's not this knowing. It's the something else. It's that wants to express itself through us.
Ooh, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean, something else that wants to express itself through?
I think it's back to that neutrality. It's when we get out of our own way. It's when we don't limit ourselves to our ego or our conditioning, and then something else. It's life. I could call it life, all that is, spirit, higher intelligence, soul. I don't have specific definitions for all these things, but there's a for me, it's another frequency, which we can all access. We all know it. We knew it when we were children. We know it when we're sensorially alive in nature or with music or poetry. It's tapping into source. It's tapping into source energy, which is always there. It was maybe stuck behind some veils of other versions of reality.
It's like, I need you to walk around and explain this stuff, because you do it better than I can. I feel it's a little bit of self-judgment in the space from me. My point is that consciousness, the explanation of singularity, and what you said there is very, very impeccably described. You once told me, and you described your way of being when you were a child, this natural state, we'll call it this innocent expression. And how did you, during this, shall we say, transformational process, this conscious exploration, this great voyage you're unpacking on this journey, how did you return back to that? Or how did you correlate to that? Because to provide more context, because it's coming through to bring more cogence to this. For me, I realized that, kind of furthering this concept of worthiness, is that the things I'd taken for granted, the way my natural expression as a child that I had learned to shift from, conditioning, what have you, and then return back to, I didn't really even know who I was in that sense. I was like, I didn't know my innocence as well as where my natural expression was, because I had been so conditioned. What was your part, your relation or your human experience with that, with this returning back to how Richard was and had conditioned out of as a child? Because when you describe that, I go, holy cow, I was different too, in a way. I mean, you did it in the whole staring out.
This is
Yeah.
very recent, by the way. This is very
Oh,
recent.
okay. All right.
Oh, yeah, because I reckon I would tap into that more through relationship with others, right, than with myself. Yeah, with myself and my own inner workings, it was a very serious place, a very burdensome place, a very, feeling all those layers of emotions, and that, with that at the time, with that, oh, I'm the creator of my reality, wasn't back then, by the way. That was only in the last, this other section of travels of the last 7 or 8 years. It was like, holy cow, what if I am the creator of my reality? That actually came with a lot of burden to start with. And then, so I think what happened in my relationships with people, that's where there could be this lightness, this shared experience and joy. And, what if we're crazy? Well, maybe we are, but it's a great, we're enjoying ourselves. So that's a good way to live, right? So, well, what I now can see is that I was finding it really hard to do that by myself. And I think my reflection is that I found it easier to trust other people than to trust myself.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
one
part of
thing.
it. Yeah.
That's one thing. The other bit that unlocked this year, there's a story to it, but ultimately, I was, I was in the Scottish Highlands, pinned down in bad weather for 36 hours, couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't even step outside to eat because the weather was too bad, which was a wonderful, nature's initiations are extraordinary. And anyway, the bit that came up wasn't some of the extreme versions I've felt of, you're a shit human being who doesn't deserve the gift of life, which is pretty strong, right? Or, you're a soul alone in the universe, a soul alone in a godless universe. I've had these sort of extreme experiences through travel and through shamanic experiences as well. No, this was quiet and subtle. It just came through as, you're scared of disappointment. And it was, holy moly. When you discover something and it feels like a pinprick, but then you realize that pinprick has infected everything else. When you see how you do one thing, if you really look, you'll see it's how you do everything. So what I noticed is I had this very old relationship with disappointment. Okay, which is, again, looking at both sides. It's either I avoid it, therefore I want to please people, or I actually want it. I create.
You attract it.
I create opportunities to be a disappointment to myself, a disappointment to others, a disappointment to life. Ultimately, so that I can treat myself as a poor victim of, human existence, and other people will care for me. Poor me, poor me, poor me. Because when you drop it, when you drop the disappointment, or you drop anything, it's like, I am fully responsible, which can be really scary. In this case, with the disappointment, it was refreshing. It was like, oh, I don't have to be disappointed anymore. And then what's been flooding through, this was August, so what's been flooding through me since then is that innocence, is that playfulness, is that innate joy, rather than I have to go and find it joy. You know, I have to go and find stimulating experiences that are going to give me joy, you know, to overcome my numbness. It's, no, there it is. It's right here. It's right here. It's right now. Anytime I want it.
You can enjoy. Big fan of etymology, as I know you are. And enjoy. I write it with a capital joy because to end is to bring in the joy. So it's really cultivating, again, back to that inner landscape, that natural frequency. And you can only enjoy if you're inside or insane, capital S, as insane on the inside. Or as I've told you, I have it here on the door from Glastonbury. We're all mad here. You'll fit right in, from the Mad Hatter and Alice in Wonderland. You know, mad has a special relationship in our lives. So yeah, I like how you unpack that, because the traversing of consciousness, you know, not only is it daunting, not only then once you enter into it, it takes some maneuverability or some recalibration. I loved how you then talk about the biggest breakthroughs are subtle. It's the
Oh,
subtle magic, because I used to expect, bells and whistles and miracles and walking on water and parting the Red Sea. And then now it's like the divine is like, no, we're going to do subtle. It's going to be really subtle and you barely notice it. And I'll never forget this. I was actually with a shaman who bears your astrological profile, my shaman teacher, which will dovetail to Sipapu, which if we have, I sense we'll have a chance, we'll talk about one of the causes you believe in and support, that Peruvian lineage. It was in a ritual with her, and I'll never forget this. I was expecting this big bang, you know, this big epiphany, this Sagittarian, like, oh, you know, it's gonna be huge, folks. I feel it. Big change, right? We hype ourselves up, big. I think that's also an American thing. We have this documentary, Bigger, Faster, Stronger. And then all of a sudden this breakthrough came, and I was like, and I realized I something came through then that I use a lot. And it's funny, again, homage to our resonance, our mutual shared resonance, is the most potent magic is the most subtle. The most potent change is the most subtle. You barely feel it. It's like one of those whispers in the wind, you know, the calling of the wind, as it were. So this is dope. I love this. I love that we can riff like this, and it's covering all the proverbial bases. So you're starting to step up, it sounds like, kind of looking at kind of what came through as the outline. You know, so you started to answer the call. You started to what I call stepping up, not your verbiage, mine. This notion of, all right, call, I can't hide from you. I can't hang up. I can't escape. I can't numb myself. You're starting to cultivate. And I know we fast forwarded and we, you know, we're going multilinear. So for those that are following, he's had the biggest epiphanies recently that have really integrated and brought this enjoyment. So backtracking a little bit, you're stepping up. Do you have any tips? Because this is part of the insights intention. Do you have any tips for how you came out of the Dark Knight, carrying that Batman theme that you and I toy with, the words, the K, coming out as the Dark Knight, coming out of the Dark Knight as the Dark Knight? How did, any tips, if it feels inspired? If not, we can leave it be, on those listening that are resisting the darkness, resisting their dark night, and not allowing it to make them the dark night. Because from both you and I sense, from my interpretation of it, once we embrace that, all of it, both sides, which we can talk about in terms of mediation, unity, society, you know, bringing that wholeness. How did you deal with your dark night? How did you pragmatically, if anything? Darkness.
well, and because there have been other episodes, it's been, I guess it's slightly different each time.
Yeah.
I'm thinking which of the most, because if I think about what it was then, it's probably slightly different to the subsequent ones.
Let's hone in on the most subtle, to follow that theme of subtlety. Which were the most
The,
subtle?
and this is not just that one. This is over the time.
Yeah.
I would say things like, always, always, always. My go-to is gratitude.
Mm.
Always, always, always. And I tell you what, when you're struggling with love and self-love, it's because it's too far to go in one go. Start with gratitude, you know. And I remember I used to, I was in a really dark place, and I would write 3 things I was grateful for, and then I could only manage one thing that I was grateful for in myself a day. It was a real struggle. I remember one day it was I can make a piece of toast. I remember that because I went back, I saw it later, and I thought, whoa, that must have been a bad time. So gratitude and gratitude for self, and just do it. Just do it as a practice. You know, when you're in the dark place, you want to get out of it as soon as possible. So you kind of go, well, does it work? Well, I'm not going to do it if it doesn't work. No, do it anyway. That's the thing. Practice. These are all practices, you know, and then some of those practices I've done over the years have really paid off more recently because I put in the practice. So gratitude. I'm not my thoughts.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter whether you believe that or don't believe that. Play with it. Play with I am not my thoughts. Right. I think the most significant one over the years, and it was the most subtle because it doesn't stand out. It's not. You can't sell books with it or sell out, you know, stadia. I did one thing for my. What's that?
Or can we?
So when I started doing self-development, I had all these great ideas, and I was like, right, I'll get the day done, and then I'll do my self-development.
Oh, wow.
As soon as I flipped that round, and all I had to do was do one thing for myself in the morning.
Eat the
That was
frog.
the one thing that changed everything.
Eat the frog.
Not the frog. It was start with self. No, 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 not do the thing you don't want. No, do the thing you do want to do.
Oh, I
Start
misspoke. Yeah. Okay. I see.
with Start with meditation. Start with music. Start with something that is just for you.
Hmm.
When I say just, I mean only. Something that's only for you because you want to. And I tell you, on a good day, I'll make time. The first 2 hours of my day will be me and my practices,
Hmm.
and that can vary. That can change. And on a not good day, that might be 5 minutes. I still do it, and you can do it anyway. You can do it having a shower. You can this shower is just for me. You know, you can do it. You can put music on while you brush your teeth. Just something, and it's the intention. That's the key. The intention is this is for me. It's not only a function of my day. This is actually good for me. So that was the biggest small one.
That's huge. I know it's subtle and it's profound.
You're
Because,
telling yourself. Think of the message you're telling yourself.
correct.
You're saying I value myself as a human being, and even if you struggle at first with the repercussions of that because it brings up your stuff, keep doing it. That you know you're getting somewhere. If it's bringing stuff up, you're getting somewhere.
Yeah. If the old gunk is coming out, then you're making progress because it's like garbage in, garbage out of the ecosystem, out of
Yeah.
our vessels.
And the other ones, I mean, you know, allow what comes up to come up.
Yes.
I would advocate salt water. So the sea is always my go-to place, and tears. You know, cry it out. It's the body's cleanse. I remember John DeMartini saying, you know, tears are the body's way of telling you it's full. You know, so cry it out.
There's another one that I love too. That's a parallel. That's tears are emotions the heart doesn't have the words for.
Oh,
Feelings the heart doesn't have words for, which goes back to that. Yeah, I love that so much right there because you gave a lot. Thank you for all those tips and very
I've got
practical.
some others.
Well, it's well, y'all here. Allow me to explain why, especially on the gratitude piece. So you again, it's eerie because we haven't really talked about this, and we've talked more on as friends. We haven't really talked about how we do what we do in our craft, and it's mirroring what I tell people, which is you got to regroove the line in the proverbial saying. You got to practice because you're shifting a way of being, and the small steps add up. And in Farsi, there's a quote by the Sufi mystic Hafiz from the town I was born in, Shiraz, that drop by drop an ocean is formed. And I remember when I was in that despicable me place, as I called it, and I've talked about it in some videos on LinkedIn and what have you. I don't think I posted this one on my YouTube. I think it was only on LinkedIn or on the YouTube channel. It was this notion of the small things. It's no easy feat to say, what's one thing I'm grateful for in this dark place about myself? And you're right. It's this shifting of that intentionality. And some people may have seen the spiral of energy and emotions. You know, you have love at the top on the upward, and then you have this hopelessness at the bottom. When we're spiraling down, and you articulated this, Rich, it's very practical, very subtle, and very profound. Thank you. Because then when you're here, to shift up here, gratitude, while it may be hard to get to self-love, which is the highest frequency, gratitude is darn near close. So it's almost like you're taking jumping stones, you know, or skipping stones, and you're subtly raising your vibration by saying, oh, I made toast today. You know, I have a thumb. I mean, if you can't say I made toast today, be like, well, what? Anything with that sacred intention. You know, Barry talked about sacred economy, and I went, wait, what? You know, sacred means to make, not necessarily holy as in whole, as in to provide that space. So we're back to this creating the space, the stillness, so that all this majesty can come in, the enjoy, the things can come in from, you know, that access point. So much there, so much there. So let's
And
shift.
also the this acknowledging how you're feeling.
Well, the allowing, yes.
Well, what I would say is it takes enormous energy to repress what you're feeling. And I mean repress. You suppress in others, you repress in yourself. That takes huge energy. So part of valuing yourself is to say, this is how I'm feeling. You know, and you may not understand it, and it probably feels, you know, like walking on hot coals. Start acknowledging how you're this is how I'm feeling, and write it, name it, scream it into the wind. You know, it starts to move. That's the, you know, the emotion, the energy in motion. It wants to move. This is what I mean. It's its own thing. It's its own energy. It wants to move. So let it move.
Get it moving. Yeah. And it's, you got to feel it to heal it. It goes to the episode with Tanya that she shares her episode on, or experience and wisdom on what you're talking about. When you take that energy, so very, again, thank you, very wise words, because when you take that energy and you're utilizing it to shove down, resist, it's energy that can be used to actually restore, replenish, vitalize, access creativity, source energy, what have you, because it's you're not expending it here, you're mindfully using it here. And I love how you keep bringing back, it keeps echoing in the space of Kadiwample, right? You're still saying this notion of, you don't know what you're doing, you have an intention about it, and you're letting the process unfold. So not knowing what the emotion is per se, right? Because some people struggle with that. What is it? You know, I was very heady. What am I feeling right now? I must understand. And I would then block inadvertently trying to understand the feeling, which goes to this E.E. Cummins quote that when I saw it, I was like, by Jove, I got to read this tomorrow for Richie Poo's thing, our co-creation. So, all right. So thank you. So here.
And also, and trust your body, and how your body remembers and how it learns. So a change might mean I'm going to sit in a different chair. It might mean I feel that I pour from the kettle with my right hand. I'm going to pour with my left hand. Listen, when I'm feeling stuck, I switch which hand I brush my teeth with, to remind myself that I can do change and I don't have to stay stuck, and then build it, and then build it. But tiny, don't go tiny. It's, you know, a friend of mine who was served in the Royal Marines. You know, he said, do something. You know, 50. If you can do it for 15 minutes in your day, do it. Okay, you don't have to climb mountains. Do it that's 1% of your day. So do one thing for 15 minutes, and see where that takes you. Not, well, I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to get where I want to in 15 minutes. That's not the point. Get started, go for 15 minutes, and then the next day do another 15 minutes, and the next day do another 15 minutes, and see where it takes you. Find out for yourself, your experience, not mine, yours.
catalyzing that momentum is huge. You're right. And it's promulgating it and keep pushing it, keep pushing it. Pushing's the wrong word. Let me erase that. Keep adding to it. Keep adding to it. Keep, it's that momentum. I guess the momentum is really the only way I could phrase it right now. This is good. This is really beautiful the way it's flowing. So let's shift gears. So you're now at this point, and I know it's still evolving and you've left one of the causes still for the sake of broadening out or rather adding some more refinement to people listening about your experience and how it shaped you. Walk us through, you have Great Adventure, you have Mowgli's Mentors, you have Help for Heroes, which I know you recently are realigning with, and then Sipapu, to name a few of the things you're involved with, because I know the most interesting man in the universe, the Dos Equis analogy, you've got your hands because you care so much.
Well,
Yeah.
and there's also the Marvel Foundation Academy for Nature Leaders, which is close to my heart as
So
well.
say that one more time.
Right, it's an academy for nature leaders.
The Academy for Nature Leaders. So
Yeah, it's been initiated and funded by a Swiss foundation called MAVA, MAVA.
okay, we'll start there. Start there and walk us backward. Whatever. How do you do what you do? How did this all shape what you do? You started to answer the call. We walked through. You stepped up. You did.
Well, the short version is I followed my nose.
You follow your nose.
That's the short version.
I love it.
The things that have opened up are the things I've said yes to, following an intention. My intention. I remember I was stuck again in around 2009. So I'd been coaching professionally for 4 years, I think. And I'm a much better coach than I am at running my business. That's common for a lot of coaches, maybe. And again, this irritation was the part of the initial transformation, where I wanted to go to a friend's wedding in Sydney and I couldn't afford it. Really good friend from school days, and I wanted to go. And I was running, I did have a bid of some, for some work, a significant piece of work with a UK consultancy. And so I said to myself, right. And by the way, I was still learning about working with intention. I was very green behind the ears. And I went, okay, if I win the work and I deliver the first 2 weeks, I'm going to that wedding. I still don't, I won the work. I delivered the first 2 weeks and I got home on a Monday night and I went, well, I better go then. So I phoned up a friend to cash flow me, because I didn't have the cash to cash flow me. I booked the flight on the Tuesday. I flew on the Thursday, stag do on the Friday, bachelor party, I think you call it, and wedding the following Tuesday. And I remember sitting on the plane going, how did that happen? With this mixture of disbelief and emotion and sort of, anyway, but it was also a trigger for, right, I'm not going to end up in this shit place again, this frustration. And I on the way back, I sat on the beach in Thailand, learned how to do some meditation, and I came back with another intention, which is I want to work with people who inspire me, because I wanted to live an inspired life. So I want to work with people who inspire me and to whom I can offer inspiration and value. And I got back. I landed at Heathrow. I was wearing my travel gear, fresh off a beach in Thailand. You can imagine, in need of a shower, and I could have gone back to my apartment, or I could have gone to this meeting that someone from my network had invited me to on mentoring and mentoring workshops. And it was a sliding doors moment. I went to the workshop, everyone else was suited and booted. I walk in with my backpack, and I meet the wonderful man called Simon Edwards, the co-founder of Mowgli Mentoring. And the short version, he invites me to go to Jordan as a mentor of a young entrepreneur. And after that, invites me to become a facilitator. And yeah, Mowgli asks the question, what is good mentoring? And it's been developing mentors for 10 years, more than 10 years now, mentors of entrepreneurs, women leaders, youth, and nature leaders.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I've been running those programs on and off for the last decade. The same gentleman invited me over to run a Pathfinder program, a transition program for injured veterans. To which I said, "Well, I don't have military experience," and he said, "Exactly. You'll offer a different perspective."
And that's Help for Heroes.
That's Help for Heroes.
So Mowgli led you to Help for Heroes. So keep going, keep flowing.
Yeah, and then as I say, Mowgli, they have they. I'm so grateful to them because they seem to access the kind of inspiring people I want to work with, whether that's women leaders in a Kenyan corporate, whether it's entrepreneurs across North Africa. They operate in the Middle East and Africa. And then more recently, nature leaders from, the Mediterranean and Africa. So I've had the absolute privilege to be involved in a 4-year academy that's part of Marva Foundation actually closing down and saying, interestingly, what is our legacy? Not, how much cash are we going to, disseminate to our partners, but how are we going to empower our partners to live on beyond this foundation? So it's wonderful. It's leadership at the core of sustainability for individuals and organizations working in sustainability and conservation. So for me to be involved in creating such a ripple effect is fulfilling. It's what I signed up for, right?
Can you tell us, so that's Mowgli's Natural, and you touched on Helping Heroes. So what did Helping Heroes show you? What was your experience like? Because I know recently you transitioned out of that.
Wow. I mean, that is, I remember a mentor of mine saying, if you've been to war, obviously you've served your country, but you have served in the most dense karmic experience that a human can go through. So initially for me, it's, and if anything, I'm a pacifist. However, I would say it's been an opportunity to serve people who've been prepared to serve in that deeply karmic way. For me, they've literally put their lives on the line for something that they care about. It's usually not something; it's usually someone. From what I experience, and for anyone listening, I don't claim to be an expert at all. I mean, how can
It doesn't matter.
how can I truly? I can empathize with human emotions. I can't empathize with experiences I've not had.
Well, let me pause real quick because this is interesting. It's two things. One, an ex-lover of mine that I may have mentioned this to you. So I used to be a peaceful kumbaya type and never understood war. And she was a vet, and I learned a lot, fellow earth sign like you, many years ago. And I learned a lot of respect. And like you, I didn't have any experience within. There's a lot of that in San Diego, a lot of vet activity and assimilation. My buddy Larry Keslin does some tangential work in that market, and I honor you for doing it. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to be experts in working with vets and PTSD and all that. Now, the second thing that came up is it's interesting, right? Because one aspect, as we bring it back to this duality, is there's a war out here, and I sense that while not all of us are warriors outside, because I sure as heck flinch when I'm fighting. I'm not a good boxer. I flinch in fights, When it comes to within, I feel like I have a grit. So I guess what I'm inviting the audience in is there are different kinds of warriors, and there is oftentimes a battle within that we have to, a dense karmic experience within that we have to go into.
Totally. And then, so with the veterans, my intention is to show up and be present. But you could say that with everyone, but to really show up and be present with their experience in each moment. And
which is our experience in each moment.
I can see where my own rage and my own
bingo
disownership and my own not wanting to face my shadow, being forced to face my shadow, these are all experiences that have that continue, because it's not rigid. For me, time is more of a spiral than a line, right? So, these experiences that have shaped me to where I am today. You know, it's what our past gets us to where we are. It's not necessarily who we are, but these are the stepping stones that get us to where we are. So these experiences mean I can hold a certain presence while they are weathering their own storms. You know, and so it's incredibly humbling. I tell you what, it still fits with the bit of I want to work with people who inspire me.
Correct.
Because when these guys and girls heal, or is it? I mean, the healing is ongoing, but when they something clicks that they don't have to be defined by their past, they are off, right? They are going because they don't stop. They are committed. They
Devoted.
know how to engage. They know how to take action. They know how to make shit move, right? Far more than those of us who haven't had military experience. So we need that in society. We need people who are going to put service above, not above, but
Equal to.
equal to self-care. You know, the bit that's been missing for them is self-care, because that's not part of their training. If they self-care, they wouldn't run at bullets, right? It's
Yeah.
actually trained. It's actually trained out of them, if anything. It's like look after the other person before you look after yourself. Okay, if you can help a veteran to include self-care with the service, they're unstoppable. And I want to see more of them valued and encouraged and supported in our community, because the first thing they turn to is those they care about, and they go, how can I be? You know, one guy, he absolutely dissolved me. I remember him starting one of these programs really angry, and he was going to take on the government about how their treatment of veterans and this, that, and the other. And by the end of the program, I think it was the end of the first week, he said, I've changed my objective. I want to be a better man, a better husband, and a better father.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it, especially when you take somebody who's gone through a lot, you show them they're not defined by who they are, and then you show them they can then take off, and then you see them take off before your eyes and then light up the world, because the world needs them to step up, and they're recently realizing that. And I love that, because in a way, how that being dissolved you is how you've shown up for me and catalyzed that for me, because in a way, we're all war-tried veterans. Our souls, some of us, our souls are war-tried veterans. And I know you and I have catalyzed this for each other. It's this, this, I need to run at the bullet. Somebody's got to do it. And it's like, well, hold on there, Haas. Hold on there, Richard. Let's put self-care equal to service and not have one over the other, which takes us back to sides, right? To polarities. Both equal. Equanimity means there's
Yes.
no good or evil. It's not vaccine people, no vaccine people. Every side, every perspective is a perspective of the whole. Every perspective is required of the whole. So it's really brilliantly put. And I love how we circle back on another topic that I may have shared with you. I said, hey, I wanted to also bring this up in the flow of things, is ambitious action versus inspired action. When I read your copy and I saw ecosystem and ecosystem, I laughed because I haven't, that was cute how you call it ecosystem. I didn't use that vernacular. I do talk a lot about ecosystems. And so I hear what you're talking about in terms of this context and frameology of ambitious action, which is more ego doing based, and inspired action coming from this fulfillment, from this people that inspire you and you inspire them, and it brings out this natural innovation and these sparks, and then it's boom 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 boom, and then it takes off from there. Everything collectively catalyzes from there. One last thing on terms of your craft and things you believe in, because it's near and dear to both of us, as you've introduced me to this dear soul sister Davina and Sipapu. Can you tell us more about, or tell us about Sipapu and why you got involved and what led you there, and why that matters in terms of the environment, Mother Earth, God,
Yeah.
all that?
The short version again of why I got involved was because the answer was yes.
My favorite word.
Am I getting involved? Yes. What? And the rational mind kicks in and goes, wow. The heart, it was a heart decision. So Davina is a beloved friend of mine. She's a
Shout out Davina McHale. We love you.
Thank you, Davina McHale. Yeah, absolutely. she's an extraordinary woman, really an extraordinary woman. We could spend days discussing her journey. You can get her on this show.
I was thinking about this. I felt into this last night. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, she's deep in the Amazon jungle now. So she's a practicing shaman from the UK, and she recently reduced her, let's say, her material life of, she's a very youthful and energetic woman in her 50s, but she's reduced her life to, I would say, 5 or 10% of what, let's say, the accumulation was over her lifetime, to move to the Peruvian Amazon, where sort of, they have crowdfunded and been bequeathed through a Cairo lineage, an area of Amazon jungle that is believed to be the belly button of the Amazon, the belly button of the planet. So,
Archetypally speaking.
archetypally speaking, it represents the sacral. And to create there what it is, naturally so, but then to create with nature a temple of emergence that represents and teaches and shares what it is to be in right relationship with self, other, and planet. Yeah, that's the short version.
And what I love about that is when I started my sabbatical, my scaring the bejesus out of myself moment, there was a couple of things that came through that I was like, okay, bucket list type of stuff for me, in a sense. That one of them was reconnecting to the earth and indigenous cultures that I'd always been fascinated by, because I understand that, being ethnic myself in a sense, being Iranian American, having this duality of this ancient heritage, and that has its own version of mysticism, so to speak. It was interesting because that as I went through my sabbatical process and I went through these initiations, one of them was the Carol, as I alluded to. And so when you connected me with Davina, it was like, wait, what? Like, this is fascinating, because for me, equally, I had disconnected from nature, right? Nature as the archetype from my own natural state, as well as nature around me, which is so refueling. And we can talk about that on, for days as well, is this notion of then when you're around that energy, when, as Barry talked about in his episode, when you're around that aesthetic, when you're around it refuels you, it recharges you, it replenishes you. And we have a sacred duty. What do you feel? Because I know you're really passionate. It dovetails to what you spoke about, this group, Natural Innovation Leaders. Where do you feel the role, feels inspired to ask you this, where do you feel the role of, I don't really like environmentalism. I don't like extremism, so to speak, or like a dogmatic. Where do you feel our relationship to the environment relates to business? I know there's a lot out there on this conscious capitalism. We have a duty to the planet, et cetera. What do you feel? Because I've never asked you this, and I'm curious, and you and I share very, shall I say, anomaly-like perspectives that are refreshing. So what's your perspective? What's your personal interpretation of what is the role of business and environment? How do they correlate?
Well, I'll start with Sapapu, because what Davina's doing, and with her business partner Nizami, so there's the balance of male, female, masculine, feminine. It's inclusion, right? So it's not let's go hide in the jungle and survive the apocalypse. They want people to go and visit. They want people to share what they discover about nature's technology, natural technology, combined with modern technology. So what they're doing is very much in response to the Hopi prophecy and other prophecies of the condor and the eagle. A time will come when the condor and the eagle will fly in the same sky. So if eagle represents people of mind and of modern technology, and the condor represents people of the heart and timeless, what I consider timeless wisdom, not ancient wisdom, timeless wisdom, then we are entering that period we are in that period of synthesis, collaboration, sharing the one sky. So that is inclusion, right? And that's why I think all these, if everything again is holographic and a mirror for everything else, that is why we're being shown so much contrast right now. There's so much black and white thinking, so much extremism, because all of it is needing to be synthesized, or actually how I feel it is it's cracking open, right? So those extremes are like two sort of halves of the shells that are cracking open. Now that from the outside, that looks like destruction,
Hmm.
right? So if you look at it as destruction,
The candle broke. You said that. That was cool.
that's incredible.
The candle broke. Wow. Praise be. Wow. That's amazing. Keep going. As they say in Arabic, mashallah. As soon as you
There
said
you
the
go.
word Arabic as destruction, the candle glass broke. There you go.
Right. And yet, from the inside out,
The flame from the inside out.
it's new life, it's new light, right? So depending on how we look at ourselves and the process that we're in right now, can look like destruction, or it can be new life. So, to your question about, if I've got this right, between business and conservation, we really need the perspective, the shift in perspective that allows true transformation is to see it as both and. It's not either or. So it's not business saying, let the activists, screw them sort of thing. And it's not the activists saying business is evil. It's somewhere in the middle. And I'm really, on this Nature Leaders Academy I told you about, we've just completed the interviews for the 4th cohort. So I've been involved in each cohort, and I've seen there's a development happening, right? I've seen this development go from, the sort of scientific end of conservation, and we need to measure this, and we need to monitor that, and we need to tell the world what a shit state we're in, right? And we need people to give us money so that we can save the planet. I've seen this progression in the narrative, if you like, to people now saying, we still need to keep doing the science and the measuring and the so on, and we need to include all stakeholders. We need to include financial institutions, we need to include governments, we need to include, and so people coming through talking about, I hadn't heard it as a expression until this year or last, conscious consumerism. And we've got it's now more common to hear people talk about donut economics. I know that some of people who've been selected onto this cohort come from the circle economy, it's called, which is a business, effectively a business that's promoting this inclusive approach to business. So what I love about that is not saying humans stop consuming, right? What it's saying is, humans, how can you consume in a way that gives back more than it takes? So it's altering the intention and the attention behind the behavior rather than stopping the behavior.
The issue is not the issue, it's how you relate to the issue. So much there. So let's backtrack a little bit. Or not backtrack. Let me go back a couple of steps. So one, yeah, I love this because I hear it as true inclusion is inside as well as outside, right? So we talk so much about it, and the theme that keeps reverberating is this inner inclusion and everything, right? Within is the duality within, embracing, unifying, synthesizing as much as outside. And I love the analogy of the condor eagle, because that's another synthesis, right? In the Persian, Middle Eastern, Shiite culture, they talk about, the Mehdi, the occulted one, and the Jesus, right? The East and West will come together. So there's this element of synthesis must begin within and outside. And this concept of, even in the mythology, condor eagle, Jesus, Muhammad, this notion of bringing everything together. Yes. And that's one of the things we've riffed a lot about is division, dividedness, separation, or language, this or that, the vaccine or not the vaccine, East or West, allopathic medicine or Eastern medicine, business or conservation. And that's what I love about what we're really promulgating is this notion of synthesis, unification, bringing together, inclusion, true inclusion.
And two things that have really helped. Well, two things that that are helping me from this year. So when I think of diversity, right, I now think of diversity as unique expression. Okay, expression of uniqueness. inclusion, I now think of as an environment where it feels safe to express that uniqueness. Which takes it beyond sort of corporate measurements, and it's like so it's appreciation of uniqueness and spaces where it's safe to express that on all levels. The other one that's really helped me is because, and again, I looked to nature for this. I think it was Einstein paraphrasing. He said, "If you want the answers to anything, look to nature."
Well, it's biomimicry. I love that. Out of Stanford, it's proved. So for the audience, as far as those that need quantitative or research theory, it's biomimicry. It's out there. There's there's the U Lab, MIT. So, anyways, continue. Yeah, it's.
And then the other one I've been looking at is privilege, which is a hot topic this year as well. And there's so many variations of privilege, to the point where I think you can get stuck in these conversations about whose privilege is more or less than someone else's privilege. But if privilege was seen as surplus, right? So typically we will say, in the areas of, finance, gender, skin color, so-and-so is privileged. Okay. Well, what if privilege was seen as, this is an area of life where I have surplus? Okay. What nature does is it diverts surplus to where there's deficit. So this is what trees do, right? For example, or bees, so I love that idea that, and your surplus might be kindness. Your surplus might be your willingness to smile. It might be your art. It might be people that your connections, your relationships, and then being able to go, okay, so where have I got surplus, and where can I channel that, divert that to where there's deficit? Which, I don't know what people think of that. Again, I come back to so what? Yeah, so what? Now I see, okay, what am I doing with my surplus, right? Where I have it. Where do I feel in deficit and I need to go and ask for help? And then balancing that, or including that with the diversity and inclusion piece. Okay, what's the truth of my self-expression? How can I honor that in other people? And where do I create environments for that to be safe for me and for others? And I even safe, I would rather say sacred. Where can we be in spaces of inclusion that honor that uniqueness?
That's deep. That's deep, because I had a colleague in a huge corporation here in the States who was like, I want to take a new spin on diversity and inclusion in his company, a more holistic take. And I loved your explanations of it, as well as everything else. Diversity is our unique expression, allowing our unique expression, everybody in the ecosystem. And then inclusion is the safe space to express. So inclusion is the containment of the diversity, right? For that natural expression, for that natural innovation to be espoused, to be catalyzed in an ecosystem, which is then biomimicry, natural innovation, however you want to call it, the divine revelation, if you want to use that spin on it. And then again, nature does its thing, like healing is automatic. Nature, innovation, creativity, expansion, growth are automatic. So we who get in the way of it and become unnatural.
It's like, trees are such good teachers, right? Do you think a tree gets up in the morning and goes, right, today I'm going to be a tree? No, it doesn't even know it is a tree. It is. It is. And it doesn't compare itself to other trees. And equally, we don't go, well, that's a pretty shit tree.
You got a thick trunk over there, Mr. Richard Tree. Your trunk is pretty thick and girthy. So
you know what I mean? We see beauty in nature.
Trees don't compare. Trees don't think. They don't analyze. They are. They're being and doing equanimously in harmony. Nature.
And how much doing are they doing in their being? I mean, they are absolutely magical beings.
Yeah. We are too. To tie it back to us as a species, right? The human race. We have an opportunity now to go back to our natural. I see a lot of what you're saying, this, grand adventure, so to speak, of this conscious exploration is going back to our nature, going back to our natural resonance, or as Barry calls it, resonance, our natural resonance, or maybe our tabula rasa, our blank slate, the way we were created.
I call it our essential nature.
Our essential nature. Yeah,
And I
our
think
essence of our nature. Yeah, I like that.
exactly, and I think that's the calling. Actually, to bring if we were bringing this full circle, what are we actually being called to? Right, and we're being called to rediscover our essential nature, and we actually know when we're out of whack with it, when not in our essential nature. That's the calling. It's you calling you. What was that expression? What you seek is seeking you. It's the same thing. It's our essential nature.
Say that again. That's the quote. What is it?
What we are seeking is seeking you.
So we're calling ourselves back home. Is that what you're telling us? Can you tie that to the singularity real quick for those that may be new to this concept? How does that,
Well,
that whole, the one observing itself, how does that tie back to that, to put a pretty little bow? Because you're hitting all the boxes seamlessly.
um, I don't know here the answer
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The knowing in me is that we know when we are home.
Snap.
And not home as we would describe it. It's home as we would feel it, sense it, experience it. It's that there's a so that I'm studying, exploring Richard Rudd's world of the gene keys.
The gene keys, yes.
Gene keys, and one of the gene keys is the sort of the elevated or the transcendent version of it, the city, is called invincibility. And he describes it. He says invincibility, English is quite a masculine dominated language, right? So don't think of it as all conquering, right? And he gives this picture, and he says invincibility was me going for a walk with my 7-year-old daughter at dawn, and the light's coming up and it's catching on the dew or the long grass. And my daughter's saying, "Can I run through that?" And I'm going, "Of course you can." So there she is. She runs through this grass in delight and joy and innocence, right? And total, let's say, safety, because she doesn't know she's not safe, right? Total secure, totally held by all of existence. And he goes, that's invincibility. That innocence and that joy to express yourself in the moment and experience your experience in the moment. I love that. So for me, that's home. There's nowhere to hide and there's nowhere to feel scared.
That's potent. That's potent leadership development. That's potent next level healing. So it sounds to me like discovering your essential nature through this conscious exploration is what you really are doing. You're at a core essential nature. Your beingness espouses, at least it did for me. It espoused, and I sense for many others, both in the Mowgli community, the Sipapu community. And I know that equally you receive back from them that what you give out. It's still this nature of, yeah, the more I sit with you, the more I go, wow, you really guide people through a conscious exploration of rediscovering their essential nature, their essence, their
Thank
essential
you.
nature.
And it's still evolving because I'm sure most of us, the more we find out, right? The more we find out how much we haven't found out yet.
Yeah.
So it's never evolved. So back to Coddywomple, right?
And it's hard to not know, as Barry said. It's hard to not know, right? It's hard to coddywumple. It is. That is the work. I see that as the actual linchpin of the work. Is the comfort within the coddywumple means that you're home, and then you realize you're home as you go through the process.
Yes, and
no.
I know I need.
Yes and no.
I know I need to be careful what I say to myself, because if I tell myself it's hard, then I'm going to create it being more hard. Yes, of course it's hard until it's not. Riding a bike how many times did we have a go at walking before we could walk? Walking is hard, right? When you don't know how to do it. Once you know how to do it, riding a bike, going skydiving, anything that we do for the first time, unless we all have that natural talent and gift for it, might feel hard until it doesn't. And we've got to be really careful of this story that life is hard. I'm not saying things don't feel hard. I do think we need to be really careful what we say about ourselves, what we say about each other, and what we say about life. Because back to what are we creating?
Personal responsibility. It's a beautiful thing. It really is, because it's this notion of we're creating it all again, back full circle. We've ended where we began and we began where we ended. It's this notion of we're responsible. What do I do about it? And yeah, and it's the words we utter then shape it and craft it, and then it also impact others, reverberates out, which is how I met you. So it's taking that personal responsibility for being the master of one's universe, what we're sculpting as we speak it. And then there was the word. Well, Richie Poo, Fresh Prince of Bellars, really grateful that we got this chat. I mean, I feel complete with it. We hit all the high notes, everything else. I mean, as usual, the synchronicity of it came together and weaved itself as we knew and intended for it to.
I did. There was one other thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Is there anything else? And bam, there's another. Yeah.
Because for me, it is the hardest, right? And the most rich source of, I don't know what to call it. Alchemical transformational juice is self-honesty. And we do know. We do know when we're being honest with ourselves. We know when we're not. Okay. And so with that, to do self-honesty with self-compassion, forgiving is for giving. So
I love that.
I find self-honesty see, my old version of self-honesty could be brutal. Right? So I could use that as a big stick. Right? And I could also use it as a big avoidance. It's like, I'm not going to go there. And if I don't tell anyone, then no one will know. Right? But I think that's the biggest source of our guilt and shame, is that we do know. Right? We might need some help, we might need some encouragement. And so with that, I would also say, set the intention for self-honesty and surround yourself with people who will hold you to it and hold you gently, kindly in it, so they don't beat you with the stick either. And we can call this vulnerability, we can call this, I think underneath that is that self-honesty. And I can feel it in my stomach as I say it, because I know that's looking in the mirror and saying, it's me. And there's nowhere else to go. Ramana Maharshi was asked, how do you relate to others? And his response was, what others?
It's all you. And in that you, there's the universe.
And also because of that, because I can go to quite deep and dark places, it's important to me that I balance the lunacy with the lunacy, the moon, with the sun and the light. So you did ask me if I had a favorite quote, and the one that keeps me going, right? There's a lot of magnificent quotes out there. The one that keeps me going is from Howard Thurman, and this has been with me for, I don't know, a good 15 years. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
Or who have answered the call and are embodying the call and are honest with themselves about if they're resisting the call. And so brilliantly put. You put a bow on it. The way I knew you would. So, last question, because it came through specifically, directly. When you leave this plane, what do you want your legacy to be remembered by, as, or by? Or what do you want to be remembered by, or your legacy remembered as? In other words, what ideal do you stand for, Batman, rich man? Right, taking us back to that quote of that, why leave your legacy for some days when you can live your legend today? So let me rephrase that question. What legacy are you living?
I really hope it's kindness, and there's all sorts of, I think we're here to discover a lot about what love really is and what it can really be. And I think that's also quite opaque and murky and right. Kindness for me is love in action.
Mm.
Try doing kindness without taking action, right? Try just thinking kindness.
Eh.
So I think if we lived in a kinder world, and that's why for me mentoring is about kindness, leadership is about kindness. Um, how you relate to your family, it's really about kindness. So and the ones who popped into my head were my nephew and my niece. If I could model to them kindness to themselves and other human beings, then everything else can be a bonus.
Can I ask you a bonus question about the bonus?
Go on
What
then.
what would it look like if that legacy was achieved today and everybody was kind today? How would that look? To expound on that.
Well, it would look as how I remember it as a three. Remember it. That's interesting. How I imagined it, remembered it as a 3-year-old.
Which is cast it forth, almighty wizard of Hass.
How do you describe a world of awe and wonder and wonder, appreciation, connection, harmony?
Is
I,
everybody in
you know what?
Cottingle? Is
We,
everybody
we don't
in Cottingle?
we don't know. It's been put to me that if we knew what's coming, and if we knew, and if I knew, and if we knew what we're capable of, we wouldn't believe it.
So it's kind of like that end game scene that we've talked about a couple of times, which I watched it again this weekend for my birthday, is this notion of the Marvel Comics end game where Doctor Strange in the Avengers, the first one in the sequence, right? He says to Tony, there's only one possibility and you have to, it looks like everything's again back to everything looks like it's being destroyed. Everybody's going to lose. And it's really, that's the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. And then that scene in Endgame where Tony tells him when Doctor Strange comes back, it sounds like that to me, where he goes, what is it? What is it? If I tell you, you won't, when you get there, you won't be able to actually do it. So it's this notion of he holds up the one finger and he goes, and I call it this way. I say, all roads lead us back to the one. All roads, all paths, singularity, whatever, all truths lead back to the one. That one absolute. And that's the only absolute. And then in that absolute, there's no absolute. So both. Yes
The
and
irony,
no.
the irony is somewhere we do know. Our essential nature knows this.
Yes.
We know where we came from in whatever belief system, as in something inside us knows, something in our system knows. You know this. I like to imagine. So what? Well, it helps me to imagine the souls, we set up in the Cosmic Cafe going, right, you'll do this, you'll do that. Hass, we'll meet through that group, in 2020, and then we'll do some cool shit together. Okay, great, right, got it, got the plan, the ineffable plan, fantastic. Oh, remember, you have to forget everything, right? Otherwise, it's no fun.
Very true. Very true. Very true. Beautifully put. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing yourself, sharing the wisdom, sharing your calling, sharing the call that you've answered and the call that comes through you, your calling to others, stepping up here to call others into that calmness, that compassion, their own superpowers, their own leadership ascension, their own coming back home to rediscovering that which they already have, their essential nature. Richard Bellars, everybody, and thank you again for tuning in to another episode, The Vulnerable Power Show, a deep dive, very deep dive into the heart of heart-centered leadership, and in this case, the heart of Richard Bellars, Fresh Prince of Bellars, the big Bellarski. So many nicknames
Thank,
already.
thank you, Mr. Hasselhoff.
Hasselhoff, Hasselhoff signing off. So for us, thank you for watching the Hass Watch show. I mean, the Vulnerable Power Show. And we hope you found this experience, this episode, not only inspiring, that allows you, if you're ignoring your calling, if you're ignoring that call, answer it. And be gentle with yourself as you answer it and as you unpack it. And we wish for each of you a blessed, inspired, and conscious day ahead. So in true Marvel fashion, we're doing an end credit scene. We're going to do a shout out to the Cottywomple Fan of the Year, Miss Nikki. We see you. We love you.